So what I'd like to do is recap what happened at the intergovernmental committee meeting of February 27, 2018. We met at the middle school. It was about a possible rezoning request from residential to commercial 2 for the Gateway Middle School property. The goal was to provide options for the current school board or future school boards and seek the highest value of the property should a sale or lease be considered. Dr. Short reviewed the history of the Gateway School buildings, the configurations, reorganizations, population, and school enrollment trends. Then we reviewed methods, restrictions, and requirements for school district buildings, lands, finances, operations, timing, process, disclosure, collaboration, coordination, governance, oversight, and reporting management. The stakeholders are the Pennsylvania Department of Education, then the community members, then the municipal officials, the school district officials, property-related experts, and others, such as traffic or safety experts. So that's the background. And since that time, we've had some movement with respect to our attempts to get people to purchase the property. So Dr. Short, could you give us a brief recap of where we've been with that and where we are now?
We've advertised probably over a year, and the contract has expired with the 360 Group, who was our listing agent for the property. Understanding that it was a residential slash school, it kind of restricted the opportunity for certain businesses to come in and present, which we did have a number of feelers, but they weren't comfortable with wanting to go through the process to go in front of council. So at that point in time, they've kind of like dropped off the radar and did not want to successfully put forward a bid. We've had some activity, multiple bids on the property, but nothing that was entertaining or worthwhile to the board and ultimately the constituents that we would be representing. So at that point in time, we've asked for a study to be done, facility study looking at the potential renovation of either Mossad Middle School or Gateway Middle School. We've narrowed down our focus to a renovation of Gateway Middle School and the potential cost of that. That's where we currently stand right now.
Questions? Comments? All right, so I have a question. Would it be useful to attempt to reconsider a rezoning C2, even knowing that we're going to keep working on the property and renovating it? Would that open the door for future school boards to be able to do what they need to with it, should that need arise in the future?
That's a question I think council.
I think you as a board need to discuss that, and you'd have to go in front of our zoning hearing board and present your case, so it would be up to you all.
Well, once again, I strictly supporting the residents who want to know what's going to go there before it gets rezoned. I know we've been through this 1,000 times. You can wait 2 years and I'll be gone.
The goal is to do the
I'm
right
turned
thing.
that.
The goal is for us to all do the right thing, whether we're here or not,
Well,
now or in the future.
I'm just
So-
saying that I'm not a real estate person, but I have talked to some of them. And if ABC company came up to you and said, you get that rezoned commercial C2 and we'll buy it off you for $50 billion, you could come to council and say, we have a general agreement with ABC company, and we'd rezone it. But just to do a blank rezoning, the people want to know what's going to go there. I don't know how.
So if I may, in the past, when something has been rezoned, without exception, you have only rezoned after there was a definite plan for the property in question?
Not 100%, no. There's been rezonings, actually, wait a minute, I strike that. Since I've been on council, I don't think that's ever happened. I don't think we've ever rezoned before we knew what was gonna go there. But,
So I can check on that, just, I'm not questioning you, but just to be absolutely.
I've only been there 6 years, so you can go back
All
6
right, so I'll do
years.
that. So on a more general level, is there a particular thing that the residents you represent are concerned about in terms of the property? Is there a
Well, there's a
particular
lot of
use?
things. They wouldn't, They wouldn't care if it was a shopping plaza, but they don't want it to be a UPS terminal. I don't know. I'm just grasping at straws here. They don't care if it's something, community oriented, but they don't want strip clubs. I don't know what to say,
But don't you think before we even get to talking to us on that end, you all need to decide if that's something you really want to do?
They wouldn't care if it was a bunch of them said to me over at the school about, a residential development, with shopping and, swimming pool and, all of that kind of stuff. A gated community, I guess you call it. But, I guess there are certain commercial things, they don't want gasoline tankers running in and out of there. I'm grasping at straws here, but.
Let me ask this then. Is the goal to sell the property? Because let's talk numbers. If you all remember, when you first even thought about the idea, you had numbers, which nobody disagreed initially, between 11 and 16 million you thought you might get for the property. It ended up being about 4.5 million, and you all, what I heard, now I'm not saying that was facts, that wasn't good enough, that was off the table because of that number.
Also, let me say this,
Wait a minute, let Greg finish, please.
Well, so-
Hold your thought.
So my point being is that the end goal? Is that the end goal? You want to sell the property, or are you going to really rehab it and keep it for the kids? I guess that's a school board decision, but I think it's only fair that when you approach the municipality, we should know if it's A or if it's B.
I think Rick had a good response to that last time. Do you remember what that was?
Well, that was then, I'm talking about today.
Sure. The goal was to maximize the flexibility for the school board so that we could do whatever we would need to do, whether it would be to sell it or keep it. But by rezoning it C2, we would be able to get a nice high price and open the door for competition.
What's a nice high price?
We don't know.
My recommendation would be the person that purchases the property, they have to go to the planning commission or actually the zoning commission first, and state their intentions. And then the zoning commission has to sign off on that, either yes or either no. But if they do sign off on it, then they have to go to the planning commission. But they have to have a plan in place. And this is what we would like to do here. And they're the ones that basically would either approve or disapprove not your transaction, but the transaction for the usage.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Wilson. Did the district go before the zoning commission?
No.
Yes.
Oh, they did?
And
And what was
did
their
the zoning
plan?
commission
What was the
recommend?
plan they presented?
To change from residential to commercial C2, they approved it. It went
Okay.
before council and got voted down.
So now, if you're that buyer, in your scenario, can you see where that's gonna scare some people off?
Let me
They're
interrupt.
gonna have to say, well, we have to go before the zoning commission, but they've already approved it and council already rejected
Well,
it.
yeah,
So now I
but-
gotta go through 3 more hoops.
Well, once you're approved by the
And
zoning,
the idea is that it's keeping potential.
once you're approved by the zoning board, then you can go to the planning commission. And if the planning commission approves it, you have two approvals. And they would recommend the council either accept or deny.
But
at
there
that
is
point.
now precedent that council does not actually adhere to that recommendation,
Well-
with this property in particular.
All right, so let's go to
With
Jack.
any of them.
Let's go to,
Well,
I just want to
let's
back
go
up
to
one
Jack,
second.
and then we'll go to Bill Kendall.
I want to clarify what Dr. Short said, just so I'm absolutely clear on this. You're saying the school board did go to zoning, as was suggested,
I did a presentation.
and zoning said,
Yes.
so one time at least, we've done exactly what you've asked us to do. The next step then was,
Council,
you took it to council,
correct.
and council ignored zoning's
Decision,
recommendation.
yes.
It
But
was
now you're
turned out.
telling us you want us to do that again.
No, I'm telling you, is this something you want to approach again? And wait a minute, let me finish, but again, the reason why you got turned down, I won't say you, the project was turned down, we got pushback from residents, not just a little bit. I don't know if they did or not, but they came to us in numbers that we weren't comfortable with because there was no plan. Now, that's why I asked earlier, is this something that because I was told originally, before this meeting, and maybe I was misinformed, that you want to rehab the school and keep it. Now I'm hearing you want to just maybe rezone it to consider selling it again.
Almost, we're giving a status update as to where the pieces are right now. We don't know.
Well, then I think until you know what you're doing, I think you'd be wasting your time coming in
Right,
front of us.
so in order for us to know what we're doing, we have to know what your sentiments are. So we're giving you a status update and receiving.
John, it sounds to me like you want an option here. You want to be able to move one way or the other with this program. And my recommendation is if you have a person that is interested in the property, you have to have that person go to zoning. He's going to have to go back to the zoning board, the purchaser, and state what he wants to do with that property.
All right, so that's where we bring in Bill Kendall, because I'm not an expert on real estate, but Bill is, and he sent a note. If you could come up and introduce yourself. He sent a note that says, a seller cannot sell a property contingent, just stand in front of the microphone, I'll get to you in a second. A seller cannot sell a property contingent on usage. I'll say it again. A seller cannot sell a property contingent on uses, and he'll tell us what that means. Number two, the market value, quote unquote, of any piece of real estate is the price a willing buyer and seller willingly negotiate between one another. And thirdly, any potential buyer is going to be willing to pay more for something that has fewer restrictions on it. So tell us what that means.
Okay, first of all, who I am, I'm Bill Kendall. I'm a lifelong resident of Monroeville. Real estate agent. For many years, I bought and sold real estate, both on the residential side and commercial side. And I've worked with people. There was a client that was going to buy them all from the Israelis about 10 years ago. So I've worked on big commercial property deals. That deal fell through, but I've worked at that scale. I've gone through a number of councils, not in Monroeville, but in other municipalities in the area, and politics are politics, but the basics of real estate are the basics of real estate. I'm an active investor. If I want to buy something, obviously, and I want to put something there, yes, of course I have to go through the zoning and the council and all that, but I'm going to obviously pay the most for something that I have the greatest flexibility with.
We understand that.
If people are going to put, conditions on it, now it's less attractive to me.
Well, would you consider the deal final if it wasn't approved by any of the
Any real estate investor worth their salt is going to do the deal contingent upon final
Right.
approvals.
Right.
And if they don't get them, but having said that, respectfully, this is a chicken and egg argument. You guys want to see a plan, but a real estate investor doesn't necessarily have the plan. Let's use the example of Montos, the Palace Inn.
UPMC East now.
The
right?
guy that originally bought that didn't know when he bought it, he was going to end up selling to UPMC.
For twice as much within a year.
That's correct.
Three
He didn't
times
have,
as
that
much.
wasn't his original
They were gonna
plan.
put a casino in there.
And, well, my point is, that wasn't his original plan. So you guys want to see a plan, you want to hear a plan, but as an investor, somebody wants to buy a piece of property, they might not necessarily know on day one what they're going to do with it. They might sit on it for 2 or 3 years to figure out what they want to do with it while they do their own demographic surveys and.
Difference is, that's private property. The people own that property over there.
You're right, but the principle is the same.
People-
If I'm gonna,
People get to say what goes there.
And they still would. If
Absolutely.
they sat on that property for 3 years and then decided, we want to build a strip club, you still have the authority and the power to tell them no through the planning commission.
Not if they meet all the requirements of a C2 area. And that's an exaggeration, but
Right, and they obviously wouldn't.
all Hugus has taken me through the class. and you can't turn them down if they meet the requirements. So if the oil refinery, if you want to exaggerate, meets the requirements, you can't turn them down.
Yeah, but you can by ordinance. You can look at a standard real estate, I should have brought it with me, it's in every standard PA contract. If there's a condition in every standard Pennsylvania contract that says, if by ordinance, it's a contingency.
Well, the ordinance is already in place. You can't make an ordinance to restrict one piece of property.
Sure, but the example you're using, and I actually agree with you 100%, you couldn't put a strip club there.
Wow,
You just couldn't.
I'm exaggerating.
Okay.
Look at the list of things that come under C2.
Because he said it first.
Well, all right.
I was all set.
I didn't bring the list with me today, but I could show you about 6 things on there that the residents would not be in favor
Yeah,
of going
fair
there,
enough.
okay? Believe me, their acceptance level is way higher than the couple things they don't want to see go there. So they just don't want to see them go there. If we blanket approve C2, the Gateway School District could sell it to anybody that meets the C2 requirement. And there's not a thing we could do about it. Our control over that property right now is zoning.
Okay, well, just to back up, the other reason I'm.
And I don't want to stop Gateway from selling it if they want to sell it. I just want to make sure the residents are acceptable to it.
Well, the problem is the residents are the one who suffer if Gateway chooses to sell it without the kind of latitude and flexibility we're discussing, because what has proven to be the case in the last couple of years is that investors are not anxious to come forward with the hopes that this will turn into a C2. I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm one of these taxpayers, but we seem to be back on the same dilemma that we started with.
Because we've had
And-
a ton of people come in front of council and put up beautiful drawings before we rezone something and said, this is what we're gonna build there if you turn it to a C3 or whatever it was. And it got voted on and unanimously approved.
When Gecko came up to that corner, across from the school, they came to us with the plans. They had everything laid out. They had traffic studies done. They had, they just laid it out on our plate, and we were able to
Did they
look at
already,
it.
did they already acquire the property?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's the point we're
Yeah,
making.
they acquired, they're leasing the property from.
Yeah.
from
They
somebody.
already had that property in their possession. What we're saying is no one is going to want to purchase that property.
I don't know that to be true.
And I don't either.
We've had that, we've
No,
had
see,
that from a
When
number.
Gecko came up to us, they were telling us about purchasing the property off Mr. John Eck. And should that transaction go through, here's what we're gonna put there. The same thing with the apartments in Mr. Wilson's ward on Evergreen.
Yeah.
You know, I think the property was already zoned one way, it needed changed a little bit, but they came up and showed what they planned on doing with it. I can't think of some more recent examples, but I did take some time to go visit Paul Hughes and the zoning people and got explanations, and they said, they told me numerous times, people come up there and explain their plan before they change the zoning. I don't remember the one real estate gentleman told me the same thing. He says he sells property continuously contingent on the zoning being changed.
All right, so I'm
Let me
almost,
ask you, may I just ask a
no,
question?
no, thank you.
How,
I'm almost ready to dismiss you, then we can go back to you, but I want to make 2 points first. So, Ron, during the intergovernmental committee meeting about a year and a half ago, you asked a question of the audience. Just show of hands, who's all against blanket rezoning? There was a vocal response to that. We're against it. I was waiting for the second, who's all in favor, but you didn't ask that question. Had you asked that question, I wonder how many people who had come there that night would be in favor of it. That is, in favor of trusting both the municipal council and the Gateway School District to do what's right for the people. So that's my first point, that question was never asked. Number 2, since we're in the situation now not to replay all of the checker pieces here, but this is a status update. Since we've put it on the market for a while, we've paid somebody to try to find buyers, we're at the point now where that's expired and we're ready to do something different. That is, we're moving ahead with some plans to renovate the Gateway Middle School. That's going to cost money. The question is how much money? So this school board right now is faced with a large, lengthy, fiscally difficult situation. We're faced with a long, lengthy, fiscally difficult situation. Maybe the next 50 years, if we take out a bond to cover what we need to do, and it hurts people for 50 years, they might ask the question, why didn't those guys find a way to rezone it, to open up the door so that, and we don't know what the answer to this is, some large corporation come in, bring jobs here, beautify it, maybe level it out, make a park, we don't know. But I think the council deserves trust, the school board deserves trust, so that we can at least not be hamstrung and tied to facing a large, lengthy, fiscally difficult situation. So if you trust us, then that might be enough capital for us to proceed. So I'd like to say, do you have anything else to say before I ask you to
I
retire?
have a question
And
for the
then to
gentleman.
Greg, then to Tom.
Okay.
Bill.
But I want you to know.
You want me to know something, so we're going to go
No,
Bill,
no,
Greg,
no,
then
no,
Tom.
no,
Go ahead.
no.
I don't have anything to add unless anybody has any questions or clarifications.
Okay,
Any good? Thank you. Okay, then
Mike.
back to Greg, then Tom, you have something
Tom,
on
go
your mind.
ahead, you can go first.
okay. I wasn't gonna let you go in. I support this for the school district. I want you to know that. Where did you go?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Now, if you have an offer on the table and you explain this situation to the buyer, and you say to the buyer, okay, we have a couple obstacles in the way, and we have, in order to get those approved, we need to come up with a plan of what you're gonna do. Will that be a deal breaker?
For some, for others, it wouldn't be. Some people who acquire property know exactly what they want to do. The people who acquire the mall property knew exactly what they wanted to do. The guy that acquired the Palace Inn wasn't so sure. They took some time to figure it out. And that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
People that bought the Palace Inn bought it before they knew the law that they couldn't be within so many air miles of the Pittsburgh casino.
That's correct.
When they stretched the thread, they said you're too close.
That's
So that blew that plan.
That's
If he would have
right.
checked into that before he bought it, he'd have never bought it.
That's correct.
But, so, once he was stuck with it, along comes UPMC, doubles his money, he's out the door. But the plan was a casino, but he didn't check into the laws.
I understand.
Because the next developer was gonna turn Westinghouse Research into a casino, and those air miles did meet the requirements.
Sure.
So, I'm just saying that he didn't do his homework before he bought the piece of property.
Right, and my reply to that, and again, we're in total agreement, and I think you'd agree, plans change. So somebody could come to you and say, hey, this is my plan, this is what we're gonna do, but he might get there,
And
and
that's
you know what?
exactly what the residents are afraid that's gonna happen.
But that can still happen.
It can happen no matter
We
what.
can
That's
sell
the
to
point.
company A who
What-
comes to you and says, we want to rezone C2, we're gonna put in,
Ricky,
park.
they don't come to us. They go to the zoning hearing board.
okay, they go to the zoning hearing board.
Right.
They say, we're gonna put in something that everybody agrees would be beneficial to the community. You grant them their
No,
rezoning,
then it goes to the planning commission,
great.
okay?
So
Then-
Tom, if I can, at the end of this, you grant them everything that they wanted. Now they turn around, they have it rezoned. Now they can turn around and say, well, actually, we're gonna build this.
There's
And
probably
if
a
they meet,
reason why we could deny that.
if they meet all of their C2 requirements, you just said you can't deny them.
They meet all the C2 requirements.
So it's,
So my point would be following up, tying all that together. As an investor, you know, you're handcuffing the potential price that I'm gonna be willing to pay by saying no upfront. That's the bottom line. You know, I'm involved in countless transactions across countless municipalities over the past decade, 14 years, and that's the bottom line.
And nobody's gonna disagree with that, and I worked for a developer for 11 years, and we did that type of stuff on contingent at getting approval
All the time.
all the time.
Sure.
And it never stopped
And you
us.
follow through,
It
correct?
never stopped us.
Yeah.
All
We
right, so-
built a lot of hotels.
If we have no more questions for
I have
Bill,
one more.
Oh, sure.
Ron, how often did we have issues with gecko going in? How many residents complained about that?
Not hardly any.
We had a few.
There was a couple, but you could put it in Fort Knox, there'd be people complaining about it.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, that's my point. I think the same thing is going on with the school district. And
Well, no,
they don't know what they're complaining about.
they're,
Well, let me.
they do.
May I like
Great,
to say
please,
on this.
yes.
No, I just heard you, John,
I'm saying, yes, go ahead.
say that, or maybe it was you, Bill, you want to rehab the building, spend money on it, correct?
There's one option.
That is an option
They don't
right
wanna do
now
that.
that we're looking towards because the 360
not
lease
saying
has expired. We're at that point of no return. We've been at this for nearly 10 years. We have 2 buildings at 50% capacity, which is not doing our taxpayers a service.
Too
You
many
understand that?
We're well
We have
aware
2
of the
buildings
enrollment.
that were constructed during the Eisenhower era. Tom Wilson, you weren't even born yet, were you? I'm just
Well, I
joking.
think I was born a little before that, yeah.
Buildings need renovated, rehabbed, remodeled. Buildings do not have air conditioning. For some people, that may be okay. For others in a learning environment today that would question global warming, I ask them to come into these classrooms when it's 95 degrees. This is what we're faced with as a district.
Here's, and to use what I'm thinking is, okay, let's just say you decide to sell the building and everything gets approved and it's gone. I still don't think, even if you leave it in present condition, you're either gonna get 4.5 million or less. I don't think you're gonna
That's
get more.
completely inaccurate. We've had offers, which I'm not allowed to say right now, but
Well, that's the last one I heard officially.
that is not accurate.
Okay, even if it's double that. Are you going to build another school? Or are you just gonna move those kids into the other school that's only 50%? That's some of the questions we're gonna get, and we can't answer that.
We've
Because it's not
answered
your place
that.
to answer them.
Yeah, we've answered those questions. During the presentations, we've had multiple presentations.
I mean, when Gitco asked, did you ask them how they're gonna stock the Coke? You know what I mean? If you get a run on Coke, how
Oh,
are you gonna
well,
handle
you're
it?
talking apples and
No,
oranges.
I'm not, Greg. You're talking about how we're gonna function as a board to manage the building that we decide to build.
Well, if you
And then
want
your
approval, we
rezoning
need to
is
know
contingent
too.
upon that, and I think you're overstepping your bounds there.
We
Well,
actually did.
that's
ask
your
them how they're
opinion.
gonna store
It's
the
not
alcohol.
our
Well,
opinion.
your opinion
No,
on what our property's worth is completely irrelevant to the
No,
topic.
Tom, let me talk to him.
One more time, yes.
And it has not, I don't care if it's worth 50 million, I'm just asking you, what is your plan? Are you gonna rehab it? Or are you gonna leave it as and try to sell it? And if you do sell it, are you building a new school? These are questions that we get. Are you gonna move those kids, those 50% that's in the middle school, over to the other school that has 50%? If that's the key, then please say it. Put it in black and white. Let's have a public hearing on
I
it.
did a public presentation a year and a half ago in the LGI that outlined every
LGI,
scenario.
let's do one better than that. Let's
On
both-
TV. It was
Wait a
on
minute, let's
TV.
both have, yeah, but your TV doesn't reach like our TV does. It don't.
It's on the website.
Okay, so
We,
hang on.
we have the plan.
What I'm saying is, why
Nobody's,
don't you
nobody's even
advertise
calling
it,
me
we
about the plan.
advertise it?
They're calling you about the plan. They've never
All
called
right,
me
so
about the
listen,
plan.
guys, I can take an action item out of this as the new chair for just tonight of the intergovernmental
I got
committee.
an idea.
So
Let's
we
put
can
a
have,
community
let's,
pool in.
let's have another meeting, hash this out, and
Can we have an open bar at
make
this next
a
meeting?
presentation so that all the questions get asked and answered. Okay, so we're moving the chess pieces around on the board right now, and that's what we wanted to do. This is a status update. So Bill, I'm gonna thank you. I'm gonna ask if there are anybody else who wants to speak on this issue, to go ahead and speak.
All I'm trying to
Who are
do
you?
is to eliminate the burden on the taxpayer. Bottom line, that's all we're trying to do.
And I get it.
Good evening, Mary Beth Cerucci. I just wanted to kind of clarify one thing that we didn't really clarify tonight, is that the property is off the market. The goal of putting it on the market was to see if we could get enough money for a down payment on a new building. And if we couldn't do that, the plan B was rehab. That kind of answers, I think, one of the questions you're asking. And the rehabbing would definitely involve a consolidation because, as Dr. Short said, we have 2 schools at 50% capacity. So we have 2 plans. The building is now off the market. We have 2 fairly new school board members. And I think in doing due diligence, before this board pulls the trigger on a multi-million-dollar remodel, it was brought up, should we revisit rezoning to commercial before we do this? I think that it's part of the discussion here, but the real question is, if you considered rezoning to commercial, is it really going to make a difference in the amount of money that we get? And from the research that some of us have done, that I've done, I think it will bring more money, but personally, I don't think it'll bring enough money to make that much of a difference on a new building.
Thank you. Questions for Mary Beth?
And I agree.
Yeah, I have a question.
I don't
about that.
disagree.
If, let's say, you don't sell it, and then you have to go out and float another bond in order to rehab the building, because it's X amount of years old.
Yeah.
Is it older than me? No. It's not older.
53.
No, I was,
Hell, that way past.
yeah. No, but my question is this.
So the building's nearly
What
70
is your
years old.
bond,
I like you, Bill. You need money, right? We'll give you money.
what is your bond obligation today?
Debt service is roughly around 40 to 50 million.
Okay, so,
So if we would look to renovate, it could add another potential 30 million onto that.
And what would it
it
cost
cost
to
you
build a new
$30 billion?
To build a new middle school, 4th-grade middle school would be about 50 to 60 million.
Or more.
Paul Schott is the
Yes.
finance director here. He gave us some numbers in the past couple board meetings.
Public
It's
meetings.
what drives me
Yes.
to bring this up, as uncomfortable as it is for all of us to discuss this. We need to do whatever we can.
So you'd be around $90 million.
To open the door for future
Debt
boards to
service.
be able to do what they need
Debt
to do.
service.
And we were looking at, originally, the plan was to eliminate or alleviate that burden by potentially selling the property for the $15, $20 million or more offer to offset the cost of a renovation here
So-
or new
So
school.
your annual debt service would cost you $9 million, approximately, if you're at 90 million.
Very good. And Ron, you have a comment?
Well, first of all, you're
1%.
wrong. I did ask how many people were in favor of it. There were 2. And who are not school board members and really. But secondly, I don't want to sit here and tell the school boards how to handle their finances. I'm concerned as a resident, but I don't want to tell you how to do your job. If you want to invest that kind of money in that school to rehab it, you think that's the best thing to do, that's fine. You want to build a new one, that's your decision. I am just here to tell you that if you get a buyer that presents a plan, I'll vote to rezone it tomorrow.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Lapsivich, you have a comment, please?
Yeah.
Please?
This is to Mr. Harvey,
And your name, please?
George Lapsovich.
Thank you.
Monroeville. My heart goes out to you, your good job in backing your citizens up, taxpayers of your ward too. Okay, you said they were concerned about tankers and the whole 9 yards.
Well, just
Okay,
generally
but what baffles me is, how long did it take you to rezone the get-go? About 6 months you had it rezoned?
I don't think Gecko had to be rezoned.
It wasn't? Okay, if it wasn't,
Because, I'll tell you what, that old William Penn, and from where Gecko is over to the industrial park where the fire station is not long, is all zoned light industrial.
okay.
Across Old William Penn, the school,
Yeah.
is R1. Don't ask me how it happened, it happened a million years ago, but that's the way it is.
Very good.
But from the other side of Old William Penn, across from the school, over to the industrial park is all zoned light industrial.
Okay.
Didn't need nothing done.
Okay. Only thing I'm concerned about the whole situation is, I'm out of here in 2 more meetings. The thing is, everybody was worried about strip clubs or whatever going into our middle school. Wasn't the citizens and the taxpayers concerned about tankers come in, the gas stations, or the selling of the beer, that there's a school across the way, about 200 yards away?
Two residents came up and asked if the selling of the alcoholic beverage was within limits of the LCB's regulations, and they answered the question. They said they're further away than that. They walked away, that was it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, George. Anybody else from the audience? Otherwise, we're going to close this down. I mean, we've got all the chess pieces out here, and that's what we wanted to do.
Can I ask a question?
John, you've gone from checkers to a chess analogy. If you could settle on
Would you
a
introduce yourself,
particular
please?
board game, I'd appreciate it.
Cheryl Boyce, Monroeville. I was at the meeting at the middle school. I didn't get to vote. If there was a vote that night in favor of rezoning, I missed it, and I apologize, because I would have voted to rezone it. And I'm going to tell you why. There's a hit precedent for this, and this is going to show my age. Mr. Wilson, you're not the only one in this room. But One Monroeville Center was Monroeville Elementary School. Now, that's a long time ago, but we have...
Not only do I know that, I went there.
Right, and so did my college roommate, so I remember that vividly. So it's not that we haven't done it recently. But one of the things that fascinated me after we had that middle school meeting was I started to drive around, and if the residents are concerned about what's going to go in there if it's rezoned, then they should be concerned for every empty lot in Monroeville that has a commercial sign on it where there's nothing there currently.
Well, they should be, but they aren't.
Well, they should be, and they all should. Well, you know what? One of the things we have to do is you're never going to make everybody happy, and we've already
But you
said
can
that.
try.
Right, but you can explain it to them and say, historically, we've done this before, nothing new. One Monroeville Center has generated how much tax revenue to Monroeville and Gateway School District since its inception? How old is that building now, One Monroeville Center? It's getting up there now.
30, 40 years.
30, 40 years
Probably
worth
closer
of
to
tax
40.
revenue to the municipality.
Yeah,
Is it that old?
early 70s, mid 70s.
Not a chance.
Because I remember when-
Mid-70s for
Yeah.
sure.
I don't think.
No, absolutely not.
I mean, it's sad when
I
you can
remember it was a
say,
used furniture store briefly, and I was already married.
Maybe
I needed
70s.
used furniture in the mid-80s.
so it's, the
Doesn't
whole point to
Well,
it
whenever-
is,
We need to iron this out, Cheryl, before we go on.
yeah.
What exactly was that bill?
Well, you know what, it doesn't matter. The point is, it generated years' worth of, decades' worth of revenue, tax revenue. And the other thing is, that does bother me about those empty lots. Because if you're gonna use the same logic that we can't do anything with the middle school, then those lots, no empty lot in Monroeville should ever be allowed to be made commercial unless you know exactly, I don't care if you're sitting on it for
Other
10
people
years.
don't care about them.
But I don't care. You either are consistent in policy, you have to be consistent in policy, and you're not being consistent in policy. And
It's not a blanket feeling. That piece of property is around residential area that, matter of fact, I think most of those residents didn't want to see Gateway School District get rid of it because they liked the school there being there.
Well, I understand that, but, you know, in the
And,
mid-70s,
and believe it or not, they're allowed to say that.
oh, I know, and I'm allowed to disagree with them. So my point is, though, if you're looking at an asset, and I'm looking at it from the thing, if I'm gonna buy a house, the more money down I have towards that house, the less debt I accrue. And I think that's something the municipality, the people need to know that. And maybe the school district needs to re-explain it to the citizens of Pitcairn and Monroeville. And it's Pitcairn too. That's your down payment. That is the money that we have accrued because that value has increased over the years that we maintain that building. And let's face it, that is the only building you guys own that is in a prime location from a commercial perspective. So that now has generated more. It's just like it's a down payment. So that you have to present the thing. Do you want us to try to use that investment and get the most yield from it and then turn around and use that to fix the school the way we need to? Or do you want to start out with no down payment and have to, because that's, if you relate it back to their homes, and what they do, then sometimes that puts it in more perspective and they understand it better too. And also if you explain, One Monroeville Center has generated how much tax revenue over those decades. And this is, you're also, to your advantage, get somebody in there that can generate that kind of tax revenue. And I have to tell you, I absolutely cannot stand that get-go. When there is a gasoline truck in there, and you're trying to get in and out at that intersection, sometimes I wonder where PennDOT's head's at when they approve some of these intersections.
So let's move on, thank you.
And they got my
And I'm
sandwich
sorry,
wrong the other
I'm
night.
sorry, I will cut it short, but that's just my perspective, having been to that
The
meeting.
buffalo chicken
But
or
thank
ranch
you.
bread?
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Okay,
Yes,
so-
I have another comment.
Let me just finish up, and Cheryl, I'd like to restate it, I like to restate things on my own terms. So what we're facing right now is some residents prefer a certain use of the Gateway Middle School property. They are yet unaware that if the school district does something that's difficult to do, that their taxes might be encumbered tremendously for the next 50 years, was the word Professor Schott used. 50 years of high taxes, he said, we must increase taxes, we must
Paying
do it.
$9 million a year,
So,
it's at least.
It's very difficult, so what I'd like to do is,
10 years.
having moved all these checker and chess pieces around, I think we can close this discussion after Tom's final comment.
Okay, my final comment is this. I think that the best plan for the school district is to sell the property, take the money, and renovate whatever schools that you have over on this campus, and move on. I mean, it shouldn't be, it's a no-brainer. I think going into debt another $40 million or $50 million,
Difficult.
that's scary.
Yeah, but just to be clear, the plan that you just said, selling that school and renovating this, puts us precisely in that spot.
Yes.
That puts us in that.
You can't renovate it for whatever you're selling.
Again, Tom,
No,
I
the
know-
renovation to this building
Oh,
is
let Jack-
dramatically
let Jack
different than the
finish.
Oh, is this the building
Hold your
you're gonna
thought, please.
renovate?
No.
Hold your thought, please. Jack.
Well, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. It just,
Keeping
yeah,
that,
whatever
You're
you
interrupting
receive from the
everybody.
sale.
keeping that building was cheaper, right? Of the two plans.
That building,
Renovating that building's cheaper,
That's what I meant.
yes.
What building?
Gateway Middle, because it has an auditorium, it has some facilities.
Right, but you still have to upgrade it, right?
Correct,
And what would that
Doesn't
cost,
cost what a new facility
excuse me, what would that cost you?
30 million.
30 million. To renovate here, it was around 40 to 46.
Yes.
Okay,
Which
so,
would more than eat up the savings we make from.
so that's gonna put you at
selling that
75 million. Or, yeah, 75 million, I mean, you're better off selling the property, taking the money and run.
building. And what do we do with the kids, Tom?
Selling the property means we build a brand new school, which is 60 million.
I'm sorry?
You're not understanding.
Sell
Selling the
something, Mike,
school
please.
means that we would build a new school, and the cost would even be higher.
Well, then that's strictly up to you guys, so maybe you don't wanna sell the school.
Right, that's.
Okay,
I just want to say
but I
this.
can't see doing another $50 million in debt.
Very good. Okay,
That's
so
scary.
Jack, did you finish your thought? Okay, Rick,
I don't even remember.
and then Greg, you have a thought?
But I'll have one after Greg talks.
You know, the idea that, none of us are taking very lightly this idea of adding significant time and dollar amount to the debt service. It's a very difficult decision. I think it's probably difficult to the point where that's why this has been kicked down the can to where we are. The can's been kicked down the road to where we are now. Every board previous to this has seen those buildings aging and deteriorating, and we've put Band-Aid after Band-Aid on it. And at this point, if we don't do something, whichever plan this works out to be, it's gonna be costlier in the end. Because no matter what, at some point, we have to renovate one of these two buildings or build a new one. That's inevitable.
Boilers, roofs are
In the
leaking.
meantime,
No
if that
AC.
roof goes, there's another $1 million we're adding. If the boiler goes over there's another $2.5 million because you have to dig up the entire floor. Not to mention the disruption to the school year and the educational process.
Well, don't you have a fund balance available?
We certainly do.
We
And
keep
that
it in-
will shrivel up very quickly if we don't, if we just keep
Well, that's
throwing the money at the building.
That's your
not.
rainy day fund, that's all.
I'm
That's
aware
for an
of what our fund
emergency.
balance is.
Well said, Rick.
That's it.
Greg, final, and then we're gonna move on to the
Yeah, we
SRO
can move on.
topic.
All I want to say is, and I'll speak for myself, and I think my colleagues will agree, we don't want to be a hindrance to the school. These are our kids too, okay? That's number one. Two, you're right, the meeting was at the middle school, that was that meeting at? Yeah, but bottom line is, that was mostly parents of kids in the school. I think, now I don't know if that's true or not, but it felt that way to me anyway, that they had concerns with that. I think we, both, and maybe more even the school district, if you decide to move on whatever plan, when you finalize it, we need to also let the public, I think we need to do a better job of telling the public what's going on. What their taxes are gonna go up, because they will. How much the debt service is gonna go up. You need to tell them, there's no national secrets at Gateway, like there's no national secrets at the municipality.
We
We
told
need
them
to
that
let
in a
them
public
know.
meeting 2 weeks ago.
Go ahead, finish.
Yeah, but how many actually attended?
What do you want us to do? So like door to door?
No, you're missing my point.
I am missing your point, and I would like to know what you think we should do to better communicate our plan. As far as when when we have a tax, if we're talking about a tax increase, we have no less than 5 or 6 budget and finance committee meetings, open to the public.
Public.
Taped, shown live,
it's in the
shown
newspaper.
in ad nauseum on public access. Nobody shows up.
But this is.
Now wait,
Go ahead.
if we decide we're gonna change the policy on how we're letting cheerleaders participate,
Oh, I know you get a.
somehow the public finds out about that through the same channels, and they show up by the thousands.
I'm well aware of that. I sat in your seat.
Right, so, I mean, if you have a magic wand to tell me how I can make everybody aware at once what our plan is, other than what we're doing, I'd like to hear it.
Well, let me put it this way to you. I think we both advertise that since we're working on this jointly, and we will, not your final plans, I'm talking about you want to get approval from us, we're going to have residents approach us. Well, why don't we encourage both on your website, our website, when you're on live TV, when we're on live TV, that we're going to have a meeting on such and such a day, but I think you better have concrete plans. If you don't, and I don't care if it's sell it and outright, or if you're going to rehab, I think you better come up with concrete. That'll end it.
All right, so
With all due respect, and we've known each other a long time,
Oh, Bill, come on.
when you keep reiterating, you better have a concrete plan, it's insulting. The plan has been addressed. The plan has been delivered to the mayor. The plan has been delivered to the public. The plan has been delivered to the constituents. The plan has been delivered to our staff. Everybody knows the plan.
But it's changed from the last time we talked. You didn't talk about rehabbing the building.
We did talk about rehab, and that was one of the
Well, I
options
must
of
have
the
missed
plan.
that then. I missed it then. I'll take responsibility for that.
yeah, I went back and the
It was.
history, and Dr. Zeddy in 2015 was talking about bringing someone on board for, I think it was $28,000 to do a study. So Dr. Zeddy, that was 2015. How many years ago was that? About this exact same thing, this topic.
Well, then here's the $64,000 questions. Where do we go from here then?
And, let's not answer that right now. So here's what I have, guys.
Do I get a
Action
shot here?
required, John. Timely arrange an intergovernmental meeting in a publicly accessible venue whereby the district can present its current status regarding the GMS property. Bingo. That's what we'll do. I'll take it on myself to create that meeting. Next, school resource officer topic. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much
gave her
for
on the
this
table, but
discussion.
you never gave me my shot. That's all right.
Mr. Harvey,
I'm gonna be the knot in your butt.
you
Because I'm
have
the
a
guy whose ward that sits in, okay?
How
You
many-
didn't give me a chance to comment on
How
it.
many people came in and protested to you?
All right.
104?
Oh,
Candace,
come on.
Let's not answer that question.
I got the roster from the meeting.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to move on. We're going to move on. SRO topic.
There's not that many residents over there.
School resource officer.
Oh, I'm so glad we're
And they
taking.
brought a friend.
Next, please.
SRO, we have been in conversations with council, mayor, chief of police, looking at bringing back an SRO, Monroeville SRO. We're currently ready to move forward with that on our end. The financing is in place, but we have not yet heard back. I did speak with the mayor. He did say that council had a few questions. I don't know if you're at liberty to talk about anything right now, or?
My question is, I heard you're getting some state funding
That is correct.
to support that? Okay. And how much state funding are you gonna receive?
We
We
don't,
have $50,000 right
How
now.
much?
50.
We have 30 of our own and 20 from Senator Brewster, so we have $50,000 that we've offered to municipality for our contribution to an SRO.
So Mary Beth said from the audience, they're $50,000 combined.
Okay. All right, now, if you remember, when we first did this program, Greg and I were here, and along with Dr. Stewart and LeMayo, Mayor LeMayo, and Marshall Bond.
George, too.
And
George
George
Palmer,
Palmer, yeah, yeah. And our offer at that time was, we would pay $75,000, and the school district would pay $75,000 toward that SRO, which then would make it $150,000, which, you know,
Correct.
cost of benefits and everything for the municipality. Now, I'm not speaking for Chief Cole, but I have a copy of the original agreement that we did in '06. And and this is something you're gonna have to hash out with Chief Cole too. Once he comes back to council and says, Tom, Ron, and Greg, I think we should approve this, bingo, it's in, period.
One of the biggest concerns that I've been told, and I've talked to the chief and some on council, is the command structure. Do you guys have an idea what your command structure is gonna
They
be?
would be self-autonomous, meaning the Monroeville Police reports to Doug Cole, myself, superintendent, assistant superintendents. They do not report to our school resource officer head, Brian Key. Vice versa, independently operating.
Well, again, you'd have to work that out with Doug.
Yes,
Well, he just asked that question. That's-
Yeah,
We just
No,
have to-
I just answered it. And I did speak with Chief on that.
Yeah, I don't, I'm not against it, so.
And, you know, obviously, there's a price difference, or a expenditure difference between the original agreement and what we're proposing. I think it's something that we had discussed and looked at was that original agreement, that was a 12-month year assignment. 5 days a week.
No, the original agreement was, it was a school year assignment.
We had the individual working full year, meaning in the summers as well.
Not our guy.
Yes,
I just talked to Doug and he said 9 months. I just talked to him.
That's what we,
meaning moving forward or what was?
No, what was?
that was our understanding.
Why would we pay half?
'Cause
the
he
salary
said-
for
I
half?
said
It
it's
was a
70
50-50 deal.
I said, is $75,000 50/50 still acceptable to you? He said, yes, even though that he's there 9 months out of the year. He said, exactly, they're more than that.
Because, well, we don't have them 6 months, you have them 9.
During the summer months, the Monroeville police officer was actually stationed at the high school and
Okay.
working out of the high school. for
Well,
the summers.
he probably was talking to me about the
Yeah.
school years.
Well, let me throw this out at everybody, as the chair of our committee. We will take your proposal back to council. I don't think, you're gonna be pleasantly surprised that we were willing to work, because again, I said it earlier, these are our kids too. And guess what? We're taking from the same pot of money from the residents. Okay? I know there's no ifs, ands, buts. Okay?
Well, I think the management of the SRO and his duties are between Mr. Short and Doug.
Yes.
And I
That's it.
totally agree with that. And so let's proceed on. We'll approach Doug, tell him
Okay.
our thoughts, and you guys have to meet and work it out. I don't think it's gonna be.
And I think the other thing that we also
Time
looked at,
is-
in addition to, I mean, we're gonna have to get to the bottom of whether it was 12-month, 9-month, whatever, that's fine. That can be
And
done.
also, it's
Semi-finished,
imperative
Tom.
with the grant.
No, I'm asking you
Time
what you were
is-
saying, the bottom of what?
Well, you know, whether the former SRO was working here 12 months, 9 months, whatever that.
I mean, he was.
But in addition to that,
with him every
looking
day.
at that, I think also, we're flexible as far as 5 days a week versus 3 days a week. You know what I mean, have kind of a rotation. You know what I mean?
Whatever we're gonna do, let's
Between
just,
Doug and
The
Mr. Short.
SRO, in order for them to,
I'm just letting council know what is
for
potentially
the
coming.
SRO to work in your school,
I'm in
they
favor
have
of
to
it.
be
I just
properly
work it
trained.
out.
Correct.
We just can't have an officer come in, he has
Correct.
to be trained as an SRO
Very good.
at that point. I don't know how many we have trained now.
3.
We have 3 trained, so maybe you could get that, roving SRO.
Anything else? We're good. I mean, everybody, I
Anything
can
else
tell
from
you.
the audience? Otherwise, thank you very much. Good, I really enjoyed this. Thank you, guys. Thank you for
Thank you.
your time, everyone.
Thank you.
We're done.